The transport vessel Meridian emerged from hyperspace at the boundary of the New Eden system. Standing on the command deck, Captain Sarah Chen anticipated the familiar stream of communication signals from the settlement below. Her display remained eerily blank. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, manning communications, looked puzzled as he worked his controls. "We're picking up nothing at all. No flight control, no public channels, absolutely zero transmissions." A sense of dread settled over Sarah. This colony housed 2.5 million souls. It ranked among humanity's most thriving agricultural settlements in the Outer Rim territories. The world fed a dozen neighboring systems with its abundant harvests of grain and produce. Such a place doesn't simply fall silent. Sarah ordered a full-spectrum scan across every available band, including distress frequencies. Marcus spent several tense minutes cycling through channels, the bridge filled with nothing but the quiet hum of machinery. When he finally looked up, his complexion had gone pale. "Captain, we're getting complete silence across every frequency band." Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She commanded a course toward the planet with maximum sensor coverage and defensive protocols activated. The Meridian wasn't designed for combat. It specialized in survey missions and exploration work. But years in the Terran Navy had sharpened her instincts, and something felt terribly wrong. During their approach, the sensor arrays started gathering readings. The initial data made little sense. Alice Park, their third officer, reviewed her instruments twice before speaking up. "We're detecting enormous heat signatures covering the entire planetary surface. Temperature readings show an increase of 50 degrees above baseline." Sarah moved to examine the display herself. "That can't be right. Run a diagnostic on the equipment." "Already completed, ma'am. All systems functioning normally." Alice brought up visual feeds, and her voice caught. "Oh, God!" The main view screen activated, revealing New Eden below. But this wasn't the verdant blue-green sphere from the colony records. Something had fundamentally changed. The continental shapes remained recognizable, but where thriving settlements and farmland should exist, only darkness and crimson patches glowed. Sarah recognized the terrible truth from battlefield recordings she'd seen before. She spoke barely above a whisper. "Those are vitrified zones. The surface has been liquefied." Silence gripped the bridge. Everyone grasped what this meant. Such glass formations only appear under extraordinary temperatures, the kind generated during orbital strikes. "Bring us into low orbit," Sarah instructed, maintaining composure despite the horror building inside her. "I need comprehensive scans of all major population centers." For 6 agonizing hours, the Meridian documented the devastation. New Providence, the capital where 800,000 people had made their homes, now existed as a crater spanning 5 miles. Residential areas had been utterly erased. Agricultural regions in the northern hemisphere were nothing but blackened ash and melted stone. Southern mining settlements had been hit with such intensity that the earth itself had turned molten before, cooling into grotesque glass formations. Marcus discovered evidence of the colony's final moments in the debris field orbiting the planet. Fragments of defensive satellites floated among destroyed escape pods, and the remains of 3 civilian ships that had attempted to flee. The assault had been methodical and complete. Nothing had been permitted to escape. Alice suddenly reported detecting a faint but artificial energy signature from the wreckage. Sarah asked if she could identify its source. After running the signature through their database, Alice's hands began trembling. "Captain, this matches Corvash weapons technology. Their plasma weaponry leaves a distinctive radiation signature." "This is definitely their work." The name sent tension rippling through the crew. The Corvash Dominion controlled vast territories beyond human space and had a reputation for aggression. They'd been making territorial demands in this region for years, though no open warfare had occurred. Humanity had attempted to maintain diplomatic relations despite the Corvash's violent history. Sarah knew immediate action was required. She ordered Marcus to prepare an urgent transmission for Terran Command with complete sensor data. The message was clear. New Eden had been annihilated by Corvash orbital bombardment, with no survivors detected. After transmitting the report, there was nothing left but waiting. Sarah kept the Meridian in orbit while continuing to scan, though she held no hope of finding anyone alive. The attack had been too thorough, too devastating. 3 days passed before a fleet materialized, not just a few vessels, but 20 Terran Navy warships commanded by Admiral Richard Jiang aboard the battlecruiser Defiant. Sarah had served under Jiang during the corporate conflicts and knew him as a measured, strategic thinker. But the face appearing on her screen was almost unrecognizable, carved from granite with eyes burning with icy rage. "Captain Chen, Navy intelligence has confirmed your findings," Jiang stated. "We're assuming command of the investigation. Your crew has performed admirably. This intelligence may have just altered the trajectory of human history." Sarah felt confused. "How could this change history, sir?" Jiang's expression hardened further. "Because the Galactic Council is already attempting to suppress this. They've released a statement labeling it a tragic accident and urging diplomatic solutions. The Corvash deny any involvement despite overwhelming evidence, and the Council accepts their denial over our proof." "That's absurd," Sarah protested. "We have weapon signatures, debris patterns. Everything confirms Corvash involvement." "I'm aware," Jiang replied. "But humanity is relatively new to the galactic stage. We've only been exploring the stars for 2 centuries. The ancient civilizations view us as inexperienced. They don't take our concerns seriously. The Corvash have been spacefaring for over 5 millennia. The Council fears offending them more than obtaining justice for our dead." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. "So what happens now?" "Now we catalog everything. Every scrap of evidence, every sensor reading, every piece of Corvash technology we can recover. Politicians will make decisions, but they'll need irrefutable proof to justify what comes next." Over the following weeks, the investigation deepened. Forensic teams descended to New Eden's scorched surface in protective gear, walking through the ruins of human civilization. They uncovered additional evidence: shell casings from Corvash weapons, fragments of their assault craft. Most damning was the black box from the colony's defense headquarters. The recording was played before Terran command leadership, with the entire civilian government present. Sarah attended as a witness, standing in the back as voices of the dead spoke one final time. Governor Maxwell Thompson's voice initially remained calm as he ordered civilian evacuations and activated planetary defenses. Then Corvash vessels appeared on sensors, dozens dropping from hyperspace in perfect attack formation. The defense coordinator's voice broke through. "They're not responding to our transmissions. They're powering weapons. Dear God, they're powering weapons. Governor Thompson attempted everything." He broadcast offers of surrender. He pleaded for mercy. He explained that New Eden was a civilian settlement with no strategic value. The Corvash answered by commencing bombardment. The recording captured screams as the first plasma strikes hit the cities. It captured the panic as millions fled with nowhere to go. It captured Governor Thompson's final words as the command center collapsed around him. "To whoever recovers this record, the Corvash did this. They massacred us all. Please make them answer for this. Please don't let us die meaninglessly." Then static. Sarah watched hardened military officers wipe away tears. She saw politicians who had built careers on peace and diplomacy sit with heads bowed. She saw President Elena Vasquez, an elderly woman, stand with an expression of absolute determination. "Send a formal ultimatum to the Corvash Dominion," President Vasquez commanded, her voice cutting through the room. "They have 30 days to surrender everyone involved in planning and executing this massacre. They will pay reparations sufficient to rebuild New Eden and compensate every bereaved family. Refusal or delay means we consider ourselves at war." One advisor, David Chen, nervously cleared his throat. "Madam President, respectfully, the Corvash military outscales ours 3-1. If we engage in war, we could lose." President Vasquez turned to face him. Her expression wasn't angry, but it was unshakable. "Then we lose while standing for what's right. But I believe we'll prevail because the Corvash have made a critical error. They assume we're weak and passive. They're about to discover that humans remember how to become monsters when necessary." The ultimatum was transmitted through diplomatic channels and broadcast on every frequency. The Galactic Council immediately appealed for restraint, offering mediation. Numerous alien civilizations urged humanity to exercise patience and trust the process. The Corvash response arrived exactly 1 week later. It wasn't official diplomatic correspondence. It was a broadcast from their war prince, a massive alien with 4 arms wearing ceremonial armor. He appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds, laughing. "The primitive apes issue demands," the war prince declared, his translator rendering perfect English. "They threaten the mighty Corvash Dominion. Should we tremble?" He laughed again, a deep, booming sound. "Let the feeble humans mourn their lost colony. The Dominion claims what it desires, and there's nothing Earth's children can do to prevent us." The broadcast ended. Sarah watched it in the officers' lounge aboard the Defiant. Around her, every human sat in absolute silence for nearly half a minute. Then a young ensign, barely through training, spoke quietly. "They're going to regret those words." A senior officer with 3 decades of service nodded slowly. Yes, they will." Sarah thought about New Eden, about families who would never watch their children mature, about farmers who died in their fields, about Governor Thompson begging for mercy that never arrived. She thought about that Corvash war prince laughing at human suffering, and she knew with absolute certainty that the galaxy was about to change forever. Humanity had clawed its way to dominance on a deadly world called Earth. They had survived ice ages, plagues and conflicts so devastating they still haunted the collective memory. They had created atomic weapons and nearly annihilated themselves, then pulled back from the abyss and reached for the stars instead. And now something had reminded them why they had learned to kill so efficiently in the first place. Not for conquest or glory, but for protection, for justice, for vengeance. The war prince had made his choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Every weapon would fire and the galaxy would burn. The Terran Federation didn't rush into conflict. President Vasquez understood that hasty action without preparation would prove disastrous. Instead, she activated protocols established when humanity first encountered alien civilizations. Massive underground factories, supposedly decommissioned decades ago, suddenly roared back to life. These facilities had been built during the corporate wars when megacorporations battled for Earth's resources. The public believed they were dismantled. That was a lie. Dr. James Morrison supervised the reactivation of Factory Complex 7 beneath the Australian desert. He walked through enormous underground chambers filled with automated production lines, each designed to manufacture war materials at incredible rates. General Patricia Hayes asked how long until full production capacity. Morrison checked his datapad. 2 weeks for basic munitions and armor. 4 weeks for advanced weapons systems. We've maintained everything for exactly this scenario. Hayes nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. We'll need everything you can produce. The Navy is bringing ships out of reserve, and they all require armament. Similar scenes unfolded across human space. Mars converted 3 terraforming facilities into shipyards. Belt colonies, home to the finest industrial workers in the solar system, manufactured hull plating and engine components around the clock. Europa Station, specializing in advanced electronics, shifted to military-grade sensor systems and weapons-targeting computers. But the most significant transformations occurred at the outer colonies. These settlements, distant from Earth's oversight, had always maintained more independence and sometimes more militant attitudes. They possessed their own defense forces, their own arsenals, and their own reasons to hate the Corvash. Commander John Blake commanded the defense station orbiting New Terra, an outer rim colony world. When the mobilization order arrived, he assembled his command staff. "New Eden is gone," he stated bluntly. "Every man, woman, and child murdered by the Corvash. The Federation is preparing for conflict, and they're requesting volunteers from colonial militias." His second-in-command, Sarah Kim, spoke immediately. "New Eden was just like us. Agricultural colony, same population, same demographics. If they struck New Eden, they could target any of us next." Blake nodded. "Exactly. Here's what's happening. Every able-bodied volunteer gets trained. Every vessel gets armed. Every available resource supports the war effort. This isn't just about revenge. This is about survival." What was meant to be a discussion became a planning session within hours. New Terra's entire society began transforming into a military apparatus. This pattern repeated across 50 colony worlds. Humanity's frontier settlers, already tough and self-reliant, became an army. They might lack formal military training, but they knew how to work hard, survive in hostile environments, and handle weapons. The colonies had been dealing with pirates and raiders for years. Now they would face something bigger. On Earth, President Vasquez addressed a special joint session of Terran Congress. Every representative attended, and the speech broadcast to every human world. "We didn't want this conflict," she began, her voice steady and clear. "We came to the stars hoping for peace and cooperation with other intelligent life. We joined the Galactic Council in good faith. We followed their regulations. We tried to be good neighbors." She paused, letting the weight settle. "The Corvash Dominion responded to our goodwill by murdering 2.3 million innocent civilians. They vitrified an entire planet. They killed children who had never seen weapons. And when we demanded justice, they laughed at us. The chamber fell absolutely silent. The Galactic Council has chosen inaction. They call for patience and diplomacy. They suggest we trust the same institutions that permitted this massacre." Vasquez's voice grew harder. "We won't wait. We won't trust. We will act." She held up a document. "I'm signing Executive Order 777, the Total Mobilization Act. Every resource of the Terran Federation now dedicates itself to one purpose, making the Corvash Dominion answer for their actions. We will have justice for New Eden. We will have justice for our dead. And we will ensure that no one ever mistakes attacking humanity for a safe choice." Congress erupted in applause, but Vasquez continued. "To the Galactic Council, you had your opportunity to deliver justice through law. You failed. Now we deliver justice through force. To the Corvash Dominion, you called us weak and primitive. You're about to learn your mistake. And to our people, the road ahead will be difficult. We'll lose people we love. We'll pay a terrible price. But we'll prevail because we fight for something the Corvash cannot comprehend. We fight for each other." The declaration sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Alien species who had dismissed humanity as harmless suddenly paid attention. Intelligence agencies across hundreds of worlds began gathering information on Terran military capabilities. What they discovered terrified them. Humanity had been preparing for interstellar conflict since first contact 50 years ago. The peaceful diplomatic face they showed the galaxy had been genuine, but it had also concealed massive military development. The corporate wars and Martian rebellion had taught humanity harsh lessons about combat, and they hadn't forgotten them. Ambassador Cathar of the Zilani Concord met privately with President Vasquez at the Terran embassy on Earth. The Zilani were among the galaxy's oldest civilizations. Wise and cautious, Cathar had been observing human development with interest for decades. "Madame President," Cathar said, his translator rendering his clicking speech, "the Zilani wish to understand your intentions. The Corvash are formidable. Conflict with them will destabilize the entire sector. Surely alternatives exist." Vasquez met his compound eyes without flinching. "Ambassador, let me pose a question. If someone murdered 2.3 million Zilani, what would your people do?" Cathar remained silent momentarily. "We would pursue justice through the Council. And if the Council did nothing? If the murderers mocked you and promised to repeat their actions?" Another pause. Then quietly, "The Zilani would wage war." "Exactly," Vasquez said. "Every species has limits that cannot be crossed. The Corvash crossed ours. There's no path back now." Cathar shifted uncomfortably. "The Corvash fleet numbers over 8,000 warships. Your entire navy perhaps has 2,000 vessels. The mathematics don't favor you." Vasquez smiled without warmth. "Ambassador, let me tell you about humanity. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other on our home world. We became extraordinarily proficient. We built weapons capable of destroying our entire civilization. We created tactics and strategies refined through countless conflicts. Then we ventured to the stars and tried to transcend our history." She walked to the window, gazing at Earth below. "But we never forgot how to fight. We never forgot the lessons written in blood. We kept our weapons sharp and our soldiers trained just in case. The Corvash think they understand warfare. They're about to learn what conflict looks like when humans stop restraining themselves." As Cathar departed the embassy, he transmitted an urgent message to the Zilani homeworld. "Recommend complete neutrality in the coming conflict. Humanity is not what we believed. They are predators who have been pretending to be prey." The message was intercepted by dozens of intelligence agencies. Copies spread throughout the galaxy within hours. Some species dismissed it as paranoia. Others quietly moved their assets away from the conflict zone. Meanwhile, Terran military buildup continued. Ships emerged from hidden bases scattered throughout human territory. Valkyrie-class carriers, massive vessels capable of holding 100 fighter craft each. Hammer-class battleships designed for close-range engagements. Ghost-class frigates built for stealth and electronic warfare. Admiral Jiang stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the fleet assemble. Ships arrived every few hours from different sectors, each adding to the growing armada. By month's end, over 2,000 warships had gathered at Rally Point Vengeance, an empty region on the border of human territory. It's the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled, his tactical officer observed. And still growing, Jiang nodded. We're pulling in everything. Reserve ships, colonial defense forces, even corporate security vessels are joining up. By the time we move, we'll have enough firepower to crack planets. Do you think it will suffice? The officer asked. Jiang considered carefully. The Corvash have superior numbers and more experience. They have better technology in certain areas, but they've never fought humans before. They don't understand how we think or fight. That's our advantage. He pulled up a tactical display showing Corvash territory. They expect us to follow standard galactic warfare conventions. Honor duels between capital ships, formal pre-engagement declarations, restrictions on targeting civilian infrastructure. They think war is a game with rules. Jiang's expression hardened. We're going to teach them that human warfare has only one rule: win. We'll use every advantage we know. We'll strike when they're unprepared. We'll target their supply lines, communications, morale. We'll make them afraid. And we won't stop until everyone responsible for New Eden is dead or imprisoned. Training intensified across all human military forces. Marine units practiced boarding operations in zero gravity. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation, studying Corvash tactics and developing counters. Naval crews drilled damage control, knowing ships would be hit and needed to continue fighting. Civilians supported the effort with total commitment. Factories operated 3 shifts. Volunteers enlisted faster than training facilities could process them. Families sent their children to war with pride and terror intertwined. Everyone understood what was at stake. Sarah Chen, now promoted to commander and given command of a fast reconnaissance vessel, attended a briefing for all ship captains. Admiral Jiang addressed them personally. In 2 weeks we move, he announced. Operation Righteous Fury begins. We're going to strike the Corvash where it hurts, fast and hard. They think we're weak. They think we'll negotiate. They're wrong on both counts. He surveyed the room, hundreds of captains commanding ships that would soon enter battle. Some of you won't return, Jiang said bluntly. Some of your ships will be destroyed. Some of your crews will die. That's warfare's reality. But everyone who falls will take Corvash ships with them. Every battle brings us closer to justice for New Eden. Remember those 2.3 million people. Remember they died because the Corvash thought humanity was too weak to matter. Prove them wrong. The briefing concluded and captains returned to their vessels. Sarah stood in Rally Point Vengeance's hangar bay, watching the organized chaos of a fleet preparing for combat. Supply ships moved between vessels, transferring ammunition and spare parts. Repair crews worked continuously fixing minor issues before the shooting started. Fighter craft launched and returned, pilots practicing combat flying. This was humanity's answer to New Eden's massacre. Not words, not diplomacy, not appeals to justice that would never arrive. War. Total, absolute, uncompromising war. The ember of rage ignited when New Eden died was now a conflagration burning across human space. And soon that fire would spread to the Corvash Dominion. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. Humanity had tried peace. They had tried cooperation. They had tried following the rules. Now they would write new rules, written in fire and blood and the wreckage of Corvash ships. The countdown to Operation Righteous Fury began. Operation Righteous Fury launched at precisely 0400 hours, Terran Standard Time. 2,000 human warships jumped to faster-than-light travel simultaneously, vanishing from Rally Point Vengeance in a cascade of distorted space-time. Their target was Jakara Station, a major Corvash military outpost on the border between human and Corvash territories. Intelligence indicated that some vessels involved in the New Eden massacre had been stationed there. Admiral Jiang had chosen it as the opening target for precisely that reason. This wasn't merely a military strike. It was a message. The Corvash received no warning. Their long-range sensors detected the human fleet mere minutes before arrival, dropping from hyperspace in perfect attack formation. By the time Jakara Station sounded alarms, human weapons were already firing. Commander Sarah Chen observed from the bridge of her reconnaissance ship the swift Arrow as the battle commenced. The human fleet had split into multiple attack groups, each targeting different sections of Corvash defenses. Her tactical officer reported enemy fighters scrambling, approximately 200 craft launching from the station. "Good," Sarah said calmly. "Inform the carrier groups to release the swarm." What happened next shocked the Corvash defenders. From human carriers, thousands of small objects launched into space. These weren't fighters. They were drones, each the size of a small vehicle, controlled by sophisticated artificial intelligence. The Corvash had never encountered anything like them. The drones moved in coordinated patterns, constantly switching targets, overwhelming Corvash defensive fire through sheer numbers. For every drone destroyed, 3 more took its place. Corvash fighters found themselves surrounded, unable to focus on any single threat. "Swarm engaging enemy fighters," the tactical officer reported. "Our pilots are moving to secondary targets." Human fighter pilots, freed from engaging the initial wave of defenders, swept past the confused Corvash and began attacking the station itself. They targeted weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and docking bays with precision strikes. On the station, Corvash Commander Thrak watched his defense network collapse with disbelief. He had fought in dozens of campaigns over 40 years. He had never witnessed tactics like this. The humans fought unlike anything he understood. "All ships engage the human fleet directly," he ordered. "We outnumber them 3-1. Press the advantage." 20 Corvash cruisers advanced to engage human capital ships. They expected traditional battle, vessels trading fire at medium range until one side withdrew. Instead, human ships did something unexpected. They charged. The human battleship Vengeance, leading the assault group, accelerated directly toward the Corvash line at maximum speed. Its armor already absorbed hits from Corvash plasma weapons, but the ship didn't decelerate. Captain Robert Thorne had orders to break the Corvash formation, and he intended to execute those orders exactly. "All power to forward shields," Thorne commanded. "And get me a firing solution on that cruiser center formation." His weapons officer worked rapidly. "Target locked, sir. Firing main railguns." The Vengeance carried weapons using magnetic acceleration to fire solid projectiles at incredible velocities. The technology was ancient by galactic standards, almost primitive. But what it lacked in sophistication, it compensated for in raw kinetic energy. 6 metal slugs, each weighing several tons, erupted from the Vengeance at significant fractions of light speed. They crossed the distance to the Corvash cruiser in seconds. The cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, barely slowed them. The first slug punched through the cruiser's hull near the engine section. The second struck the bridge. The third, fourth, and fifth hit central sections, each creating house-sized holes as they passed completely through the vessel. The sixth missed, sailing into empty space. The Corvash cruiser disintegrated, explosions rippling along its length as internal systems failed. Debris scattered in every direction. Other Corvash ships hesitated, shocked by the sudden destruction of their largest vessel. The Vengeance didn't decelerate. It plowed through the Corvash formation, guns firing continuously. Other human ships followed, breaking the defensive line into chaos. "This is insane," Commander Thrak said, watching from the station. "They're sacrificing their ships." But human ships weren't being sacrificed. They absorbed damage that would cripple Corvash vessels and continued fighting. Their armor was thick and layered, designed to take punishment. Their damage control teams worked at incredible speed, sealing breaches and rerouting systems almost as fast as they were damaged. The battle transformed into brutal, close-range combat. Ships fired at point-blank range. Missiles crossed the space between vessels in seconds. Boarding pods launched from both sides. This was fighting the Corvash had never experienced, and they weren't prepared. The boarding actions proved particularly shocking. Human Marines, wearing powered armor and carrying automatic weapons, attacked Corvash ships with ferocity bordering on madness. They fought through corridors deck by deck, using tactics refined in thousands of small conflicts across human space. Sergeant David Martinez led a 20-man team onto a Corvash destroyer. They cut through the hull with plasma torches and entered a maintenance corridor. Almost immediately, they encountered Corvash defenders. The Corvash were larger than humans, nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms and tough scales serving as natural armor. They were individually stronger and combat-trained, but they had never fought humans in close quarters. Martinez and his team moved as a unit, covering each other, using grenades and suppressing fire to control the battlefield. When a Corvash warrior charged Martinez, he dropped low, letting his teammate shoot the alien in the side, then finished it with a burst from his rifle as it fell. "Keep moving," Martinez ordered. "We need to reach reactor controls." The team fought through 3 more defender groups before reaching the engineering section. Martinez planted explosive charges on the reactor containment system while his teammates held the entrance. "Charges set," he reported. 30 seconds to detonation. "Everyone out!" They raced back through the corridors they had just cleared, racing against time. Behind them, alarms blared as the Corvash crew realized what was happening. The Marines reached their boarding pod and launched just as the charges detonated. The Corvash destroyer's reactor went critical, destroying the ship from within. It was one of dozens of similar actions across the battlefield. After 6 hours of intense combat, Commander Thrak made the hardest decision of his career. "All remaining ships retreat. Fall back to defensive position Delta 7. His second-in-command stared. "Commander, we still have forces. We can continue fighting." "Look at the display," Thrak snapped. "We've lost half our force. The station is crippled. If we stay, we die. At least if we retreat, we can warn the Dominion about these tactics." Surviving Corvash ships disengaged and jumped to hyperspace, abandoning Jakara Station to its fate. The station itself was severely damaged, weapons destroyed, shields offline. Admiral Jang broadcast across all frequencies to the station commander. "Commander Thrak of Jakara Station, this is Admiral Richard Jang of the Terran Federation. You have 2 options. Surrender immediately and permit us to board, or we destroy it with all hands. You have 5 minutes to decide." On the station, Thrak looked at the human fleet surrounding his position. His defensive guns were gone. His ships had fled. He had 3,000 crew members still alive. "Fighting would be suicide. We surrender," he transmitted. "Don't fire. We're powering down weapons and opening the docks." Human Marines boarded Jakara Station in force. They secured the crew, seized all computer systems, and began downloading military intelligence. What they discovered exceeded their expectations. Jakara's computers contained deployment schedules, fleet compositions, and communication codes for a large section of Corvash military operations. They also found evidence confirming what everyone already knew. 3 ships stationed at Jakara had participated in the New Eden massacre. Their captains had recorded the attack as a training exercise, proud of their efficiency in destroying a civilian target. Admiral Jiang watched the footage once, his expression carved from stone. Then he issued orders. "Those 3 captains and their command crews are to be separated from other prisoners. They're being transferred to the Defiant. They'll stand trial for war crimes." The Battle of Jakara Station had lasted 36 hours from start to finish. The Corvash had expected it to take weeks. News of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy with shocking speed. On the Corvash homeworld, War Prince Krall received the reports with growing fury. How is this possible? They're primitives. They've only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. His military advisor, an old warrior named Shath, studied the tactical reports carefully. "My prince, these humans fight unlike anyone we've encountered. They don't follow established warfare conventions. They use weapons we consider outdated but employ them effectively. Their ships are built to absorb damage rather than avoid it. And their soldiers fight with determination bordering on suicidal." "Then we crush them with numbers," Krall declared. "Contact our allies, the Vakoth Collective, the Rendon Empire, the Seekar clans. Anyone wanting a share of human territory can join us. We'll sweep across their space and incinerate their worlds." Shath bowed but felt uneasy. Something about the human attack pattern worried him. They hadn't just struck to win a battle. They had struck to send a message, and the message was clear. Humanity would not stop until they had justice for New Eden. Within days, 3 other aggressive species announced support for the Corvash Dominion. They saw opportunity to weaken both sides and grab territory in the chaos. The conflict was spreading beyond the original combatants. Humanity's response was to accelerate their offensive. While diplomats on Earth dealt with political fallout, the Terran Navy launched attacks on 6 more Corvash positions simultaneously. Each attack followed the same pattern: overwhelming initial assault, brutal close-range combat, and complete destruction or capture of the target. The Corvash began realizing they faced an enemy fighting by entirely different rules. Human ships rammed damaged vessels to destroy them. Human Marines used tactics that seemed insane but worked. Human commanders sacrificed portions of their fleet to achieve objectives that traditional military thinking said weren't worth the cost. And behind every attack, driving every tactical decision, was the memory of New Eden. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were conducting a crusade. In a secure communication channel, Admiral Jiang spoke with President Vasquez about the conflict's progress. "The Corvash are calling in allies," Jiang reported. "We're now facing 4 different hostile species. Our casualty rates are increasing. Can we win?" Vasquez asked bluntly. Jiang nodded slowly. "Yes, Madam President. We can win, but the cost is going to be high, higher than initially projected. We're going to lose ships and people. Entire fleets might be destroyed before this concludes. And if we don't fight, then New Eden means nothing. Then the Corvash and everyone like them will know they can kill humans without consequence. We'll spend the rest of our existence waiting for the next attack." Vasquez was silent momentarily, then continued the offensive. "Do what needs to be done. We knew this would be difficult. We knew people would die, but we also know why we're fighting. Make sure every soldier, every sailor, every pilot knows it too. They're fighting for New Eden. They're fighting so that massacre never happens again." "Understood, Madam President." The conflict continued spreading. More worlds were caught in the fighting. Refugee crises erupted as civilians fled combat zones. The Galactic Council repeatedly tried to broker peace talks, but both sides refused. The Corvash wanted unconditional human surrender. Humanity wanted justice for their dead. Neither side would compromise. The galaxy was burning, and the fire showed no signs of extinguishing. 6 months into the conflict, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Trade routes stable for centuries were now war zones. Entire sectors evacuated as the fighting spread. The galactic economy, which had grown comfortable and predictable, crashed as uncertainty destroyed confidence. The Corvash Dominion and their allies had numerical superiority. They could replace destroyed ships faster than humanity. But humans had something more dangerous, a cause. Every human ship carried New Eden's memory. Every soldier fought, knowing they were avenging murdered children. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres commanded the destroyer Relentless, part of a human strike force operating deep in Corvash territory. Her ship had been in continuous combat operations for 3 months, jumping from battle to battle with barely enough time to repair and resupply between engagements. Her tactical officer reported after the latest skirmish that they'd lost 2 more ships, the Thunder and the Resolute, both gone. Rachel reviewed the casualty reports. The Thunder had been commanded by her academy friend, Captain Michael Chen. The Resolute's captain, Sarah Kim, had saved Rachel's life 2 months ago during a boarding action. Now both were dead along with over 1,000 crew members. "Add them to the memorial," Rachel said quietly, "and send standard notifications to their families." The memorial was a database every human ship maintained, names of the fallen, how they died, what they accomplished. It grew longer daily. Some ships held memorial services weekly just to keep up with losses. But even as humans died, they kept fighting. The Corvash were learning to fear human tactics, the unpredictable attacks, the willingness to sacrifice ships to achieve objectives, the absolute refusal to surrender even when outnumbered. The conflict had produced stories spreading across human space, tales of heroism and sacrifice that kept morale high despite losses. Like the Battle of Carina 7, where the corvette Defiance held off 3 Corvash cruisers for 6 hours while civilian transports evacuated the colony. The Defiance was destroyed, but not before every civilian escaped, or the defense of Outpost Echo, where 200 Marines held against 5,000 Corvash soldiers for 3 days until reinforcements arrived. But the conflict was also producing darker stories, stories of civilian casualties, of colonies caught in the crossfire, of refugees with nowhere to go. The Galactic Council was overwhelmed trying to manage humanitarian crises across 50 star systems. Ambassador Cathar of the Zelani Concordat met with other neutral species, representatives in an emergency session. The meeting room filled with aliens from dozens of different civilizations, all concerned about the spreading violence. The humans refuse all peace overtures, Cathar reported. They demand complete Corvash surrender and reparations for New Eden. Nothing less will satisfy them. A delegate from the Forian Commonwealth, an aquatic species known for pacifism, spoke up. This is madness. Millions have died already. Entire worlds have been damaged. When will they be satisfied? When the Corvash pay for their crime, Cathar replied. The humans view this as a matter of principle. They believe that accepting anything less than complete justice makes them appear weak, and weakness, in their view, invites more attacks. And the Corvash? Another delegate asked. The Corvash will not surrender because they believe they can still win, Cathar said. Both sides are committed to total victory. This conflict will only end when one side is completely defeated. The meeting ended without solutions. The neutral species could only watch as the two sides destroyed each other. On the Corvash homeworld, War Prince Krall was planning his final solution to the human problem. His military commanders had assembled the largest fleet in Corvash history, over 3,000 ships, including vessels from their allies. The Grand Fleet, as it was called, would crush human forces in one massive engagement. We will strike at the heart of human space, Krall announced to his commanders. We will attack Earth itself. Once their homeworld falls, their will to fight will collapse. The conflict will be over. Admiral Shath, who had advised caution from the beginning, felt obligated to speak. My prince, intelligence suggests the humans have been preparing for exactly such an attack. Earth's defenses are extensive, and if we commit our entire fleet to this offensive, we leave our own worlds vulnerable. Krall slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. The humans are weak. They have lost hundreds of ships. Their colonies are bleeding resources to support the effort. They cannot maintain this level of intensity much longer. One decisive blow will finish them. The Grand Fleet assembled at the Vardok Nebula, a region of space thick with gas clouds that interfered with long-range sensors. It was the perfect staging area for a massive offensive. From there, they would jump directly into human space and begin their attack on Earth. But Terran intelligence had been watching. Spy satellites, deep cover agents, and intercepted communications all pointed to the same conclusion. The Corvash were planning something big. Admiral Jiang stood in the war room at Terran Command, looking at the intelligence reports. Around him, the senior leadership of the Terran military had gathered for an emergency briefing. They're massing their fleet at Vardok, Jiang said, pointing to the star chart. Every intelligence source confirms it. This is their final push. They're targeting Earth. President Vasquez, attending via secure video link, asked the critical question. Can we stop them? Jiang nodded slowly. Yes, but it's going to cost us. We'll need to commit almost our entire fleet, and we'll need to hit them at Vardok before they can organize their attack. If we let them reach Earth, they'll catch us in our own defensive positions. Better to fight them where we choose the battlefield. What are our chances? Vasquez asked. Even odds, Jiang admitted. They outnumber us significantly, but we'll have the advantage of surprise. They think they're the hunters. We're going to show them they're the prey. Orders went out across human space. Every available warship was to converge on Rally Point Vengeance and prepare for the largest space battle in human history. Ships pulled back from offensive operations. Reserve units were activated. Even damaged vessels undergoing repairs were pressed into service if they could still fight. Commander Sarah Chen brought the swift arrow to Rally Point Vengeance and found herself surrounded by the gathered might of humanity. Over 1,800 ships filled the space around the rally point, carriers and battleships, destroyers and frigates, every type of vessel the Terran Navy possessed. She attended the final briefing for all ship commanders, held in a massive, virtual conference that included every captain in the fleet. Admiral Jiang addressed them all. "In approximately 16 hours, we jump to the Vardok Nebula," he began. "The Corvash Grand Fleet is there, preparing to attack Earth. We're going to hit them first." He brought up a tactical display showing the nebula and the projected positions of Corvash forces. "This is going to be brutal. They outnumber us almost 2-1. Many of you won't survive this battle. Some of your ships will be destroyed in the opening minutes. That's the reality we face." Jiang paused, looking at the faces of commanders displayed on his screen. "But remember why we're fighting. Remember New Eden. Remember those 2.3 million people who were murdered in their homes. Remember that the Corvash laughed at us when we asked for justice. This is our answer to that laughter. This is how we protect our future." He straightened, his voice growing stronger. "Tomorrow we either win and secure humanity's place in this galaxy, or we die trying. Either way, we make sure the Corvash never forget what it means to make an enemy of humanity. All ships, prepare for jump. This is for New Eden." The battle cry was taken up by thousands of voices across hundreds of ships. "For New Eden!" 18 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vardok Nebula. The Corvash Grand Fleet was spread across a huge volume of space, their ships positioned in loose formation while they waited for final deployment orders. They were not ready for combat. They were not ready for the fury that humanity brought. Admiral Jiang gave the order that would define the battle. "All ships execute Plan Hammer Strike, break their formation and engage at close range, make them afraid." The human fleet charged forward in multiple attack groups, each targeting a different section of the Corvash formation. The Corvash scrambled to respond, trying to organize a defense against an enemy that was already among them. The fighting was immediately intense. Ships traded fire at ranges so close that explosions from one vessel damaged others nearby. Missiles crossed the space between fleets in seconds. Fighter craft and drones swarmed through the chaos, hunting for targets. On the battleship Vengeance, Captain Thorne fought his ship with savage efficiency. His vessel was taking heavy fire from 3 Corvash cruisers, but he kept pushing forward, targeting the largest enemy ship he could find. His engineer warned that the reactor was at 80% and climbing. They were taking too much damage and needed to fall back and repair. "Negative," Thorne said. "Load special munitions. We're going after that dreadnought." The special munitions were planet-killer missiles, weapons designed to crack worlds. Using them in space combat was technically possible, but incredibly dangerous. The explosions were too large, the radiation too intense. But Thorne had orders to break the Corvash fleet, and he was going to follow those orders. His weapons officer reported missiles locked on target ready to fire. "Fire all tubes," Thorne commanded. 6 planet-killer missiles launched from the Vengeance, streaking toward the Corvash dreadnought. The massive enemy vessel tried to shoot them down, destroying 4. The remaining 2 hit. The explosions were visible across the entire battlefield. Bright flashes of light that temporarily overwhelmed sensors. When the glare faded, the dreadnought was gone. Simply gone, along with 6 other Corvash ships that had been too close to the blast. But the Vengeance had paid a price. The radiation from the explosions washed over the ship, frying electronics and killing exposed crew members. The ship's shields failed. Its weapons went offline. Its engines sputtered and died. "All hands abandon ship," Thorne ordered calmly. "This is the captain. We did our job. Now save yourselves." Escape pods began launching from the dying ship. Thorne stayed on the bridge, watching as his crew escaped. When the last pod was away, he sat in his command chair and waited. A Corvash cruiser, seeing the helpless human vessel, moved in to finish it off. Thorne activated the ship's self-destruct, overloading the reactor. The Vengeance exploded just as the Corvash cruiser came alongside, destroying both vessels in a final act of defiance. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human ships damaged beyond repair rammed Corvash vessels or self-destructed to take enemies with them. The humans fought with desperation, born of absolute commitment to their cause. But the Corvash fought back. They had numbers and they used them. Human ships were surrounded and destroyed. Entire squadrons were wiped out. The casualties mounted on both sides until the space around Vardock was filled with debris and the dying. Admiral Jiang watched from the Defiant as his fleet was slowly ground down. They had hurt the Corvash badly, destroying over 1,000 enemy ships, but humanity had lost half its own fleet. The battle could still go either way. Then something unexpected happened. War Prince Krall, commanding from his flagship at the center of the Corvash formation, made a mistake. Frustrated by human resistance, he ordered his ships to close ranks and concentrate their fire. It was a reasonable tactical decision, but it created an opportunity. Jiang saw it immediately. All carriers execute Operation Final Strike. Launch everything. The human carriers, which had been hanging back and launching drones, suddenly moved forward. They released every fighter and missile they carried in one massive swarm, then accelerated directly at the Corvash flagship. Krall watched in horror as 3 human carriers, each one the size of a small city, bore down on his position. He ordered his fleet to stop them, but too many ships were out of position. The carriers crashed through his defensive line, taking terrible damage but not stopping. The carrier Valiant, commanded by Captain Jennifer Walsh, was the first to reach Krall's flagship. Her ship was burning, its armor shredded, half its crew dead, but the engines still worked and she still had control. "For New Eden," Walsh said simply, and set her ship on a collision course. The Valiant struck Krall's flagship amidships, the impact crushing both vessels. The Valiant's reactor exploded and the flagship broke apart, killing War Prince Krall and his entire command staff. With their leader dead and their formation shattered, the Corvash Grand Fleet broke. Ships began retreating in panic, jumping to hyperspace without coordinating with each other. The battle became a rout. Admiral Jiang ordered pursuit, but most of his ships were too damaged. They had won, but barely. Over 900 human ships were destroyed or crippled. Tens of thousands were dead. The victory had cost them almost everything, but they had won. The Corvash Grand Fleet was destroyed. Their leadership was dead. The conflict had reached its turning point, and humanity, bloodied but unbroken, stood ready to finish what they had started. The news of the Battle of Vardock Nebula spread across the galaxy within hours. The Corvash Grand Fleet, the largest armada ever assembled by the Dominion, had been destroyed. War Prince Krall was dead. The Corvash military command structure was in chaos. For humanity, victory came with a terrible price. The memorial databases on surviving ships were now filled with names. Entire crews that had fought together were gone. Ships that had served with distinction for decades were nothing but debris fields. The human fleet that had gone into Vardock had been 1,800 ships strong. Only 900 had survived, and many of those were barely functional. Admiral Jiang stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at the casualty reports. His flagship had survived but would need months of repair. Around him, the remains of the human fleet were gathering damaged vessels and searching for survivors in the wreckage. His operations officer reported quietly that the final count was in. 42,000 personnel lost, another 20,000 wounded, 914 ships destroyed or so damaged they'd never fight again. Jiang closed his eyes for a moment. 42,000 people, each one a parent or child, a friend or lover. Each one who had joined the fight for New Eden and would never see home again. "Start the memorial services," he said, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them we won. Tell them the cost. Tell them it was worth it." On Earth, President Vasquez received the news in her private office. She read the casualty reports, the battle summaries, the lists of destroyed ships. Then she did something she hadn't done since the conflict began. She put her head down on her desk and cried. She cried for the dead. She cried for the wounded. She cried for the families who would receive notifications that their loved ones were never coming home. She cried because she had ordered this, because she had committed humanity to total war, and because it had worked but cost so much. After 10 minutes, she composed herself, wiped her eyes, and called her staff. There was still work to do. In Corvash space, the Dominion was collapsing. With War Prince Krall dead and the Grand Fleet destroyed, various Corvash factions began fighting among themselves. Some wanted to continue the conflict. Others wanted peace at any price. Civil strife erupted on multiple worlds as different groups struggled for control. The Corvash allies, seeing the Dominion's weakness, began abandoning them. The Vakoth Collective signed a separate peace treaty with humanity, surrendering the ships they had contributed and paying reparations. The Rendan Empire withdrew from the conflict entirely, moving their forces back to defend their own territory. The Seekar clans tried to negotiate favorable peace, offering to help hunt down Corvash war criminals in exchange for lenient treatment. Humanity accepted these offers, but made clear that the terms were non-negotiable. Every species that had supported the Corvash would pay. Every ship they had contributed would be accounted for. Every war crime would be prosecuted. 3 months after the Battle of Vardok, the new Corvash government sued for peace. The delegation that arrived at Earth was led by Counselor Vaith, an elderly Corvash who had opposed the conflict from the beginning. He met with President Vasquez in a formal ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. President Vasquez, Vaith began. Speaking through a translator, the Corvash Dominion acknowledges its defeat. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. Vasquez looked at him without sympathy. There will be no negotiation of terms, Counselor. Only acceptance. The Terran Federation demands the following: complete and unconditional surrender. All Corvash military forces to be disbanded and placed under Terran oversight. Reparations totaling 5 trillion credits to be paid over 50 years. Every individual involved in the New Eden massacre to be surrendered for trial. Corvash territory to be reduced by 40%. With the ceded worlds to be administered by neutral powers under Terran supervision. Vaith listened to the terms, his four-eyed face showing a mix of shame and resignation. These terms are harsh, President Vasquez. They will reduce the Corvash to a minor power. You should have thought of that before you murdered 2.3 million civilians, Vasquez replied coldly. You have 72 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, the Terran Navy will resume offensive operations. And this time, we won't stop until every Corvash world is under occupation. Choose wisely. The Corvash government accepted the terms 48 hours later. The formal surrender was signed aboard the Defiant with Admiral Jiang presiding. The ceremony was brief and without celebration. This was business, not a victory parade. The most important part of the surrender was the handover of Corvash officers responsible for New Eden. 17 ship captains, 32 senior officers, and 5 civilian administrators who had ordered the attack were transferred to Terran custody. They were transported to Earth under heavy guard. The trial was held at The Hague in the same courtroom where humanity had once tried its own war criminals. The proceedings were broadcast across human space and to anyone in the galaxy who wanted to watch. The prosecutors presented evidence that was overwhelming and undeniable: recordings from the attack, orders from the Corvash command chain, testimony from survivors who had been off-world when New Eden was destroyed. The defense attorneys, appointed by the Terran government to ensure fairness, could offer little except pleas for mercy. Their clients had followed orders. They had been taught that humans were inferior. They had not understood the magnitude of their crime. The chief prosecutor, a woman named Rebecca Thompson, who had lost her sister on New Eden, gave the closing argument. She stood before the court and spoke for 20 minutes about the lives that had been lost, about children who would never grow up, about dreams that would never be fulfilled, about a colony that had been peaceful and productive, destroyed for no reason except territorial ambition. These defendants claimed they were following orders, Thompson said. They claimed they didn't understand. But ignorance is not innocence. Following orders is not absolution. They made choices. They pressed the buttons that fired the weapons. They gave the commands that killed millions, and now they must face the consequences of those choices. The verdict was unanimous. guilty on all counts. The sentences were carried out 1 week later. The Corvash officers were executed by firing squad, a method chosen deliberately to mirror the violence they had inflicted. Some in the galaxy protested that the trials were vengeance, not justice. Humanity's response was simple. Justice delayed is justice denied. The Galactic Council had its chance to act and did nothing. Humanity had delivered the justice the Council could not or would not provide. With the conflict over and the Corvash defeated, humanity faced the question of what came next. The Terran military, which had grown to massive size during the conflict, needed to be maintained. The colonies that had been damaged needed to be rebuilt. The economy needed to recover. And humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy needed to be redefined. President Vasquez addressed a joint session of Congress 6 months after the surrender. Her term was almost over, and this would be one of her last major speeches. "We did not want this conflict," she began. "We entered the stars hoping for peace. We tried to be good neighbors, good citizens of the galactic community. The Corvash Dominion responded to our goodwill with mass murder, and the Galactic Council, which was supposed to maintain order, did nothing." She paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives from every human world. "We learned a hard lesson. In this galaxy, strength is the only currency that matters. Words without force to back them are meaningless. Laws without enforcement are suggestions. We cannot rely on others to protect us. We must protect ourselves." She pulled out a document and held it up. "I am announcing the New Eden Doctrine. From this day forward, any attack on human civilians will be considered an act of total war. Any nation, any species, any organization that harms our people will face the full military might of the Terran Federation. We will respond with overwhelming force. We will not negotiate. We will not compromise. We will have justice or we will have vengeance. The choice will be theirs." Congress erupted in applause, but Vasquez held up her hand for silence. "This doctrine is not about conquest. It's not about domination. It's about ensuring that New Eden never happens again. We will defend ourselves. We will defend our allies. And we will make certain that everyone in this galaxy understands that humanity is not weak, not helpless, and not to be trifled with." The New Eden Doctrine became the foundation of human foreign policy. The Terran Federation began establishing military bases throughout the sector. The Navy, rather than being reduced to pre-war levels, was maintained at nearly full strength. Human ships patrolled trade routes, providing security that the Galactic Council could not. Smaller species, those who had been bullied by more powerful neighbors, began requesting Terran protection. Humanity offered defensive pacts, stationing ships at strategic locations throughout the sector. Some called it imperialism. Humanity called it preventing the next New Eden. The Galactic Council, humiliated by its irrelevance during the conflict, tried to reassert its authority. They passed resolutions condemning human militarization. They demanded that humanity reduce its fleet and dismantle its forward bases. President Vasquez's successor, President Michael Rodriguez, responded with a simple message. "No. The Council had its chance to maintain order," Rodriguez said in a public broadcast. "It failed. Humanity will not trust its safety to an organization that allowed New Eden to happen. We will defend ourselves and we will defend our allies. If the Council doesn't like that, perhaps they should have done their job in the first place." The message was clear. Humanity was now the dominant military power in the sector, and they had no intention of giving up that position. Commander Sarah Chen, promoted to captain after the conflict, stood at a memorial on Earth dedicated to the fallen. The memorial was a simple black wall with over 2.3 million names carved into it. Every person who died on New Eden. Every soldier and sailor who died in the war that followed. She ran her fingers over some of the names, recognizing friends and comrades. Michael Chen, who had commanded the Thunder. Sarah Kim from the Resolute. Captain Jennifer Walsh, who had sacrificed herself at Vardok. So many names, so much loss. Was it worth it? A voice asked behind her. Sarah turned to see an elderly man, wearing a jacket with New Eden colony patches. One of the few who had been off-world when the attack happened. "My wife was on New Eden," the man continued. "My 2 daughters, my grandson, all of them gone. We fought a conflict that cost thousands more lives. Did it change anything?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. We made sure everyone knows there's a price for killing humans. We made sure the people responsible faced justice. We made sure New Eden will never be forgotten. Whether that was worth the cost, I can't say. But I know we couldn't do nothing." The man nodded slowly. "My wife would have wanted justice. She was like that. Never let anyone push her around." He touched the wall, finding his family's names. "I just wish it hadn't cost so much." "So do I," Sarah said quietly. They stood together in silence, two people who had lost loved ones, paying their respects to the dead. Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation had been transformed. They were no longer seen as naive newcomers or primitive apes. They were seen as dangerous, capable, and absolutely committed to protecting their own. Trade with human worlds increased as species sought good relations with the new power. Diplomatic requests flooded into Earth from civilizations wanting alliances or protection. Some species, those with aggressive tendencies, began rethinking their foreign policies. The lesson of the Corvash Dominion was clear. Attacking humanity was suicidal. The price of aggression was total defeat. Others, more peaceful species, found in humanity a partner willing to maintain order. Human ships escorting merchant convoys, human troops helping suppress piracy, human diplomats mediating disputes. The role that the Galactic Council should have filled, but never did effectively. 20 years after New Eden, a ceremony was held at the rebuilt colony. The planet had been terraformed again, cleansed of the radiation and devastation. New cities had been built, not exactly like the old ones, but similar in spirit. New families were moving in, starting fresh, building lives. Admiral Jiang, now retired but still respected, gave a speech at the dedication ceremony. He was old now, his hair white, his face lined with age and memories, but his voice was still strong. 20 years ago, this world was murdered, he said to the crowd of thousands gathered in the new capital city's central plaza. 2.3 million people died here. Good people, innocent people, people who had done nothing wrong except exist where someone more powerful wanted to expand. He gestured to the city around them. We brought them justice. We made sure their deaths meant something. We changed the galaxy, but we paid a price. 60,000 military personnel died in the conflict. Hundreds of thousands more were wounded. Families were shattered. Lives were changed forever. Zhang paused, looking out at the audience. Many were descendants of New Eden's original settlers, children and grandchildren of survivors. Others were new colonists, drawn by the promise of a fresh start. This colony exists because good people refused to accept that might makes right. Because humans decided that justice mattered more than safety. Because we chose to fight rather than submit. New Eden died, but from its ashes we built something stronger. We built a humanity that will never again be weak. That will never again trust others to protect us. That will never again allow our people to be murdered without consequence. He raised his hand in salute to the memorial behind him. A simple stone monument bearing the names of the original New Eden's dead. To those who fell here and in the conflict that followed, we remember. We honor your sacrifice, and we promise that you did not die in vain. The galaxy knows now that humanity protects its own. Always. Forever. For New Eden. The crowd took up the cry. For New Eden. The words echoed across the rebuilt city, across the planet, across human space. A reminder and a promise, a memorial and a warning. Humanity had gone to the stars seeking peace. They had found war. They had lost innocence but gained strength. They had paid a terrible price but earned respect. And they had learned the most important lesson of all. In a dangerous galaxy, survival belongs to those strong enough to fight for it and committed enough to win. The memorial stood as testament to that truth. 2.3 million names carved in stone, a reminder of what was lost. And above the memorial, in orbit around New Eden, 300 Terran Navy ships stood watch, a reminder of what was gained. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Never again would they be seen as weak. Never again would anyone make the mistake of thinking that humans would not fight to protect their own. The galaxy had caught flame, and from that fire, humanity had emerged transformed. Not conquerors, not tyrants, but guardians, protectors, warriors who fought not for glory but for justice. And everyone, from the smallest species to the oldest empire, knew that the price of attacking humanity was total destruction. The Corvash had learned that lesson. The galaxy had learned that lesson. New Eden would never be forgotten, and humanity would never forgive.